Have you ever considered this idea that the deeper reason why you actually undertook that trip or took that job or whatever it might be had nothing to do with the thing that you thought was the reason you undertook that job? Our souls don't really care much for so-called earthly achievements, things we put on our CVs. They care about much deeper things. The tools and frameworks of thinking that get us success in the first half of life are typically not the tools and frameworks that get us to meaning in midlife and the second half of life. A lot of what gets us success in the first half of life is the skills and competencies that we acquire either in our education or our exposure or just sheer grit of bodily energy to acquire competencies in certain ways. And a lot of that has to do with the application of almost more left brain type of thinking. We assess options by way of pros and cons, about tried and tested paths of success, and that kind of thing. But it's only in midlife where we need to consider switching gears because, again, our soul does not typically get deep meaning and satisfaction out of a pros and cons exercise that we can neatly share and convince the soul, no, in fact, the right-hand column is heavier than the left. No, our souls typically derive way more meaning from being able to know the difference, for instance, between an opportunity and a distraction or test. One of the people who I think has made one of the most remarkable contributions to providing a framework and a tool to navigate midlife and beyond is Joseph Campbell. He created a narrative structure for understanding a human life. He did this as a consequence of investigating mythology from around the world, studying fables, studying stories, and he came up with what became known as the hero's journey, otherwise known as sort of the monomyth, the sort of parent story from which all great stories would ultimately be born. I think there was as many as more than 30 different phases to the story, and one of them is that you would recognize at the beginning of any great movie, for instance, that the hero of the story is seen in the context of their ordinary life, navigating things as they will, but there's something about them that feels incomplete. And it's embedded in that there's the sense of a call to adventure, something they need to go and accomplish. They then are confronted with that natural resistance in oneself, which says, for me, that big adventure? No way, that's too risky. But it's then that the next phase of the journey is encountered in a narrative way, which is a sort of, when you have those synchronicities, when suddenly someone out of the blue comes and speaks to you in a way that resonates with this call to adventure. And who's this person anyway? Maybe they're a customs official or a telecounter at some retail outlet. It's in that you're affirmed that this is actually not a joke. This is a thing that you need to go and do. And in doing that, you're honoring this call to adventure, and maybe at some point you meet a mentor along the way. But it's when we undertake the journey that we encounter tests, allies, enemies, and this is super interesting. So perhaps it's this idea that, okay, now I've embarked on this journey, I'm going to start this business, but then you get a job offer from some great corporate. Fantastic money, perfect security. You know you need it, you've got a family. What is this? Is this an opportunity or a test? When we are able to engage in this journey, we head into what's called the special world in Joseph Campbell's narrative structure. We go from this ordinary life to a world in which it's a much more unknown context, unknown world, which is going to be one where we're going to go and figure out why it is that we set out in the first place. Mostly the reason we set out in the first place was just to honor this call to adventure, this voice inside us that needed to be explored. So in choosing this call to adventure, we head out of the ordinary world, we head into what Joseph Campbell talks about as the special world, a place which is filled with the promise of growth and things that might make life worth living. Obviously embedded in it is a sense of the unknown, a sense of risk, and choosing to go on these adventures really is the defining difference between a sense of meaning in one's life and not. The story goes that at some point it all becomes clear why it is that we had to undertake this mission. There is a moment where it all comes together, where we're massively pushed to dig out a part of ourselves. And when we're able to do the work of personal change, we leave that place with an insight, and we sort of narratively wise, we bring that back to the village, we bring that back to our communities, and are able to share some of the insight that needed to occur for us in order to accomplish that thing. And so maybe it's true that you're undergoing something really tough right now. Consider that you're in the heart and in the belly of your own hero's journey. Consider that. So what does this mean for all of us as we're navigating an executive life? I think the main takeout for me is that we need to be aware as to where we are in our own hero's journey. When we can locate ourselves relatively accurately in our hero's journey, a lot of things become really clear. The location we need to be in, around the relationships that are really important, around the opportunities to say no to. Because when we honor that circular arc, we're able to be in reconciliation with our soul's needs. And really, it's these kinds of tools in the midlife and second half of life that make all the difference. Because we know by this point that simply getting the checkbox isn't always what gives us the deeper meaning that we're so deeply sort of craving. So I hope that's been useful. Check out Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, and let's have a conversation about it if at any point that feels like what's needed in your life.